Hey there, we are just under an hour away from 2021, a new year and a chance to finally say goodbye to 2020. So we're going to do something a little different tonight. We'll get to today's headlines soon, but first, take a look back at the challenges and the silver linings. Starting with the biggest, most obvious story of 2020, the coronavirus and COVID-19. It's taken away so much from so many. Education for children, the livelihood that people spent their lifetimes building. Families lost loved ones. Some didn't even get the chance to say goodbye. Here's WFI News 2's Marissa Tanzino.
The reality of the coronavirus seemed so far away at the start.
At last check, China's health commission confirmed 25 deaths from the virus.
But in a matter of months, cases would surge right here in the Triad. In March, school systems prepared in case coronavirus eventually made its way here.
We hope the coronavirus never impacts Guilford County and our schools. However, we know that thought would be short-sighted.
Just days later, the first case in Guilford County. March 14th, public schools closed. The governor said they'd reassess the situation on a 2-week basis. Parents, like Laura White, remember scrambling to make changes.
I was like, there's no way I can be at home with my kids for 2 weeks.
But as cases surged, those weeks turned into months. Retail stores and restaurants were forced to close. Vintage to Vogue boutique owner Jennifer Graff will never forget it.
What do I do? Like, how do I survive not knowing when we were going to reopen?
Healthcare workers like Wake Forest Baptist Health ICU doctor Ashish Khanna thought eventually the spread would slow, but soon he'd see some of his first patients die of COVID-19, a reality that would only get worse.
That was shocking, to tell you the truth. I had never seen a disease as violent in its trajectory.
A surge continued through the summer. Over time, businesses eventually given the okay to reopen with restrictions.
I remember not knowing if we should be open.
Schools slow to send kids back to the classroom.
I think it's an impossible decision, no matter what they would have chosen and what route they would have gone.
And in December, case counts and hospitalizations shattering records.
What we're faced with right now is probably much worse than where we were in March and April.
And while a new year doesn't mean we're out of the woods, there's hope that resolutions will include taking steps to stop the spread, so businesses, schools, and lives can go back to normal again. Marissa Tanzino, WFMY News 2.
One of the most powerful parts of 2020 came over the summer. Thousands took to the street in the middle of the pandemic to protest. A nationwide conversation about equality, police brutality, and justice, sparked by the death of a man in Minneapolis.
George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd! George Floyd!
There was no reason for George Floyd to lose his life. There is nothing that I've ever seen in police training that would condone the actions of those officers.
If I'm not over here messing up my community, come on. And what are y'all doing? Because that's not going to bring my brother back at all.
While most protests in major cities stayed peaceful, some did turn violent. Windows smashed, businesses looted. The Triad also grappled with unrest. March in Greensboro were met with pepper spray and tear gas. As businesses boarded up, fearing the worst, artists painted messages of hope, filling the streets with color and light.
I heard someone say that the other day. It was a little kid, and he was like, "Mom, I see all the artworks. This is like a museum." I was like, it made my heart.
We had some rioting, we had some looting going on, but I want the narrative to be, no, this was peaceful. This was a peaceful event, this was a loving event, this was an event of unity. We didn't come to destroy the Greensboro. We came to challenge the city of Greensboro, but we did not come to destroy it.
As the summer moved on, the movement shifted to Winston-Salem. Dozens of protesters arrested there, demanding justice for John Neville. That was the black man who died in the Forsyth County Detention Center. 6 jail employees were charged in that case. Neville's family overwhelmed by the community support.
One of the biggest things we were trying to also pass was our dad was full of life. He enjoyed life to the fullest. He laughed loud and he danced hard.
Remembering it's been an entire year, and the fact that this year has passed so quickly, it's just really surprising, but it's also been very humbling to see how much community has come together for us.
While cities across the U.S. discussed change, Triad cities made it happen. In Greensboro, that includes requiring officers to step in if a peer attempts to abuse their power and getting rid of restraints that restrict breathing. Plus, in Forsyth County, the sheriff's office banned that bent leg prone restraint, a move that activist groups applauded. But both sides here say this is only a start. They say so much more is needing to be done in 2021. Critics of Governor Roy Cooper also hit the streets to protest this year. The Reopen NC movement had hundreds of thousands of followers on Facebook. Still, Cooper won a second term in November, and that was a tame political story this year. Here's a look at the roller coaster ride of politics in 2020.
Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call.
When you turned on the TV in 2020.
How has Dan Forrest responded to this pandemic?
If there wasn't a political ad,
well, I want to thank you very much, North Carolina.
It was video from another politician coming to court your vote. We had not one or two or three, but 4 presidential candidates in North Carolina this evening. The old North State took a new importance in the tight presidential race. But the national spotlight really focused on North Carolina's Senate race. At the time, the most expensive congressional race in history, with more than $280 million spent on campaigning. A last-minute shakeup in the polls happened after Senator Tom Tillis fought off coronavirus.
I'm Cal Cunningham.
And Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham, well...
Cunningham dodging recent appearances after admitting he sent sexually explicit texts to a woman who is not his wife.
Greensboro's Congressman Mark Walker closed out the year sending this video message to people in his district.
It's been the honor and privilege of my career to be able to serve the people of North Carolina in Congress.
The Republican decided not to run again after lawmakers were forced to redraw his district to favor liberals. And it was almost certain Democrat Kathy Manning would win the seat in November. Something with less clarity? The status of the Department of Justice investigation into Senator Richard Burr for possible insider trading violations. In July, FBI agents raided his home and took his cell phone. After records show, Burr sold up to $1.7 million worth of stock in early February before the market plunged because of coronavirus. Burr says he used public knowledge and did nothing wrong. And then, before all of that happened, there's one more footnote that would have been huge news in any other year. The House impeached President Donald Trump, but Republican senators, including Burr and Tom Tillis, acquitted him. Listen, all of 2020 seems like it's right out of a political blockbuster, but it really happened right here in the Triad. North Carolina is no stranger to severe weather. Hurricane season, it comes every summer. This year, it was Isaias in August. These are images of that Category 1 storm. It was one of several tropical storms that churned across the U.S. in 2020. Our meteorologist Christian Morgan breaks down the record-breaking year in the tropics.
When you think about wild weather in 2020, you think about hurricane season, right? It was record-breaking. In fact, we had 30 named storms in the Atlantic this season. 13 of those storms became hurricane, and 6 of those 13 actually became major hurricanes, meaning they were a Category 3, 4, or 5 storm. But just how record-breaking was it? Well, let's take a look at the numbers. We often like to compare the 2020 season to the 2005 season when there were 27 named storms. 15 of those were hurricanes, and 7 of those became major hurricanes. The average, 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. So yeah, we kind of blew it out of the water. But why? There's a couple ingredients that we have to have for tropical storms and hurricanes to form. You got to have warm ocean water, you got to have weak wind shear, and you have to have some kind of tropical wave or disturbance, a cluster of thunderstorms, to get the process kick-started and get it going. We had all of those things in play as we went into the 2020 hurricane season, but it's not really about how many storms form. It's about how many make landfall, and almost half 12 storms of those 30 named storms made landfall in the U.S., most notably along the Gulf of Mexico, where there were 6 landfalls. 5 of those 6, however, made landfall in Louisiana. Delta, Laura, Cristobal, Zeta, and Marco all made landfall in Louisiana. Only one storm that made landfall this year made landfall in North Carolina. Of course, that was plenty. That was Hurricane Isaias at 11:10 p.m. August 3rd at Ocean Isle Beach. It came ashore as a Category 1 hurricane with 85-mile-per-hour winds. But not just the Gulf of Mexico. It was also Central America that was a hot spot, with Hurricane Eta and Iota both making landfall only 15 miles apart from each other, only 2 weeks apart from each other. We broke another record too. We actually ran out of names for hurricanes and tropical storms. We had to move to using the Greek alphabet for only the second time in history. We got all the way to theta this year, but do you have an idea what the first time in history we had to move to the Greek alphabet was? Yeah, 2005. You probably guessed it. And our hurricane season got off and running to an early start, even before the official start of hurricane season on June 1st. In fact, not including 2020, the last 5 years all had at least one named storm before the official start of hurricane season. So it begs the question, are we going to have more active hurricane seasons? Is that going to be a thing going forward? Well, if you look at the data, we are having warmer winters, which lends itself to warmer sea surface temperatures, which, if you remember, is an ingredient for tropical storms and hurricanes to form. So in a nutshell, yeah, we think we will have more active hurricane seasons. Will they all be like 2020? No, we don't think so, and we sure hope not.
And 2020 also had quite the ripple effect on the sports world. Remember in late March, the scene down at the Greensboro Coliseum, an absolute ghost town, as this was the moment COVID-19 changed sports as we knew it. Canceled ACC tournament, March Madness, and the virus also affecting the pros and high school sports. But before that, in late January, the entire world grieved in shock as one of the greatest in Kobe Bryant passed away in a helicopter crash with his daughter Gianna. I personally will never forget the moment I found out the news, and I think we all share that same feeling. A memorial that was later held where you could feel the love pouring out of Staples Center.
God knew they couldn't be on this earth without each other. He had to bring them home to heaven together.
When Kobe Bryant died, a piece of me died.
But as Kobe's wife put it, that ceremony was for a celebration of life, as shocking and painful as it may have been for every single one of us. But the roller coaster of emotions that was 2020 didn't stop there. One of, if not the greatest Panther to play the game, Luke Kuechly, dropped a bombshell on all of us, retiring in January after playing just 8 seasons. And his farewell message, one of true, raw emotion.
It's never the right time to step away, but now is the right time for me. And it's a tough decision. I've thought about it a lot, and I think now is the right chance for me to move on. And it makes me sad because I love playing this game. I've played it since I was a little kid, and it's my favorite thing in the world to do.
And it was also one of our favorite things in the world to watch number 59 when we had the chance. I think we are all very grateful for that. But the shakeup within the Panthers organization continued. The franchise fired Ron Rivera and made a bold move hiring Matt Rule, who had never coached before in the NFL.
I'm so committed to our players, and I know Mr. Tepper and Marty are so committed to our players having the very best. This should be a place that players say, I want to go there.
It's funny because when you think about it, that's only scratching the surface. It was a year full of constant change and continuing to adjust to a new normal. It sure puts a lot in perspective for all of us, right? So as we move into 2021, sports or not, let's all continue to count our blessings and be grateful for what we do have. Here's to a new beginning.
Tonight, we are also reminded of the lives we lost in the last year. More than 300,000 people who died from COVID in the U.S., plus athletes that inspired us, actors that tugged at our hearts, musicians that moved us, and people who became unofficial parts of our family. David Stern, the man who created the modern NBA. Chadwick Boseman, the actor who inspired millions in his role as the Black Panther. Sean Connery, the face of the James Bond franchise. Regis Philbin, a television legend. Alex Trebek, the beloved host of Jeopardy, a comfort to millions. Katherine Johnson, a woman who broke ground on a new frontier in space. Congressman John Lewis, a man who led the civil rights movement, securing freedom for millions. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Supreme Court justice who spent decades battling for women's rights. And so many, many more. Separated by distance, by masks, by windows and walls, it has been a difficult, lonely, relentless year. But there have been moments of joy, understanding, appreciation, and love. WFI News 2's Alma McCarty walks us through the silver linings of 2020.
When we couldn't be together, we found ways to stay connected. Celebrations once in person moved online. Lily and James Woodward streamed their wedding ceremony, most friends and family taking part from afar.
We love each other, we want to get married, we don't want to push it back just because we've waited on this day for so long.
Drive-through ceremonies took the place of traditional graduations. Birthday parties turned into parades, emotional all the same.
It's super important to celebrate all of the accomplishments that our students have made.
Smiles and waves sparked joy for assisted living and nursing home residents.
Hello, ladies. We miss you too, really a lot.
Guilford County Deputy Chief Vic Maynard told us visits with his parents through a window were bittersweet, but hopeful.
That is extremely different. My family's at peace with it, that it's all for the best.
Pandemic shutdowns were met with unique takeout options and creative ways to socially distance.
Just fortunate and grateful that God has allowed us to keep the doors open. I have a lot of places that I frequent, and I will be supporting all of them.
Speaking of getting creative, Triad teachers adapted as lessons went online, still just as dedicated to their students.
I know I'm doing a good job every time we have a live lesson and there are more cameras on.
The essential frontline workers, the healthcare heroes who never stopped, were recognized for their hustle. Several stepped up, making or distributing masks and PPE to protect them.
These are washable and reusable, sir.
Sometimes it's those small things that make the biggest difference.
Many people recovered from this deadly virus, like Pastor Jeff Harmon, one of the first to leave Cone Health's ICU with a new perspective.
Nothing's that big of a deal, and nothing's that bad anymore.
And in December, the FDA gave the green light to the vaccine, a critical step in the right direction.
Really emotional, I'm not going to lie. I got a little teary-eyed.
As we bid farewell to an unforgettable year, challenges and heartbreak abound. We saw glimmers of hope and of humanity, a blessing to remember in 2021. Alma McCarty, WFMY News 2.
Ain't that the truth? Just ahead, we are getting an up-close look at the damage left behind by that blast in Nashville. It is the first time cameras have been allowed this close to the scene. Plus, Christian Morgan's back with your rainy, damp, full forecast. Next.